This is The Gorge. It's a podcast where my friend Sarah and I gorge ourselves at overanalyzing a topic.
The Gorge is brought to you by Patreon. That's patreon.com/thegorge, where if you want to support us, you absolutely can. And when we hit the $200 a month mark, we will start That's Hell You're Walking Into, a podcast where I force Ben to learn all of the nuances of the lore of Fate Stay Night. It's a great time, so you should actually contribute toward it, because I have a lot of fun doing it. There is a pilot episode somewhere in our backlogs. You can go check it out. And I love subjecting Ben to pain, frankly. I think it's really funny, because Fate is a very uniquely painful experience. So absolutely, come hit us up, The Gorge Podcast. Wait, the other way around. Sorry, patreon.com/thegorge.
Yes, that's it. Patreon.com/thegorge.
I almost got through an ad read without messing it up. I'm so sad. Oh, well, one day I'll get it. Ben, what are we talking about? Because you've got the list in front of us.
Okay, so we are doing kind of a cool thing. Usually we go whenever we're like, oh, what do we want to do? And sometimes we'll just go and peruse itch.io and we'll get a bunch of like smaller like game jam games or, just little projects we think look cool, and we'll do a whole bunch of those. Yes. Well, if you remember when we went to MomoCon,
the way last year.
We met a really cool guy who was giving out pamphlets for a wrestling indie game he was working on.
Yes.
Well, he emailed me the other day with a thing he's calling Indiepocalypse, which is an anthology collection, a monthly anthology collection, where he is getting 10 devs together every month, 10 different devs, to just throw their games together in a compilation and then putting it up for sale on itch.
Yep.
So he gave us a code for that, and so we checked that out. There's a whole bunch of just like small itch.io games in there. Mm-hmm. And it was
extremely cool, because my man's I read the email. My man's is devoted to making sure that indie creators get paid. Mm-hmm. So the very cool thing, if you check out Indiepocalypse, is that everybody who made the games does get a cut of the royalties of Indiepocalypse sales, which I think is great.
Yeah, very cool.
We love collective action at the Gorge.
Yes, we do. So we took a look at all of them.
Yeah, well, most of them.
Most of them,
yeah.
I
didn't get around to playing the Game Boy games, so I'll have to let you talk about those. Mm-hmm. And there was a tabletop game in there, which obviously I have not had chance to play because I'm too busy playing other tabletop games.
Maybe you can throw it towards
I might pitch it to Big Gay Nerds when we have like a downtime episode and see how it is. Because from what I understand of the tabletop game, Ben, what's the tabletop game called?
One is Descent into Madness. Descent
into Madness is a Lovecraftian-inspired tabletop one-page system. Well, not one page. I think it's about a 3-page system with a very simple character sheet. So we might try it out on Big Gay Nerds when we have some downtime, because I think it sounds really interesting. But obviously, we are pretty booked up for the moment.
Right.
Otherwise, I would have given it a shot. But I love, for the record, I basically love all like small rules systems, like Lasers and Feelings and stuff like that. If you've never played Lasers and Feelings, huge recommend. So I would think that this is just as good, because I think small, like, rules light systems are some of the most fun at this point to me. Like, I've gotten to that point in my life where I don't want to learn 800 rules that come with I like D&D well enough, but Big Gay Nerds has opened my eyes to the fact that there's way better systems out there than D&D. Pretty much every other system is better than D&D, actually, as it turns out, except for Exalted. Sorry, guys. And so I think one-page or small short-page systems are the way to go to, like, really getting people to get interested in tabletop games. So
a tabletop game that you can play on a car ride is a good game.
Oh, absolutely. with only like the most minimum number of dice required is the best. And yeah, I think everybody on Earth has like a D6 somewhere in their house. So we love simple tabletop systems. So maybe at some point on Big Gay Nerds we'll give it a shot. But unfortunately, I could not play them in a timely manner.
Yeah,
so,
we didn't really get a chance to sit down and run a session of it, but it looks cool. Mm-hmm. And it is cool to see a tabletop game amongst this collection of itch, video
and they mentioned
games.
that they mentioned in Indiepocalypse is that it is more than just video games. And itch.io actually has a pretty robust tabletop storefront where if you want to buy different PDFs for tabletop games, you can actually go to itch and they have a tabletop section. So Indiepocalypse has made a point of noting that this also includes tabletop systems, which I think is really cool because there's never been a better time to be a tabletop game fan because of despite my loving to shit on D&D at this point, Critical Role and Taz the Adventure Zone have been incredible marketing tools to make people realize that hey, tabletop gaming is extremely cool.
It is extremely fun to do.
Yeah. And now tabletop as a subculture is way bigger than it ever has been. So big recommend. And so even if you aren't if I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, if you aren't a big video game person, but it's fine if you're not. Maybe you're here for big gay nerds, in which case, hello. So yeah, that's another reason to check out Indiepocalypse is to get your hands on different kinds of tabletop systems. Yeah.
But beyond that one, there were 9 other games in this list here.
Right.
So we'll just go down in alphabetical order. The first one was 8-Bitty Games, which is the a game that required use of a Game Boy emulator.
Yes.
To play.
And I completely forgot about them because I was like, I'll put that off. So I'm going to let you talk about them for a minute.
So Indiepocalypse is a collection of 10 small indie games. Mm-hmm. And 8-Bitty Games is a even smaller collection of Game Boy-esque, classic Game Boy-esque games. It's basically this is the WarioWare of the collection.
Yeah.
It's games that take 30 seconds to kind of get a feel for. Mm-hmm. There aren't really a lot of them are pretty generic, just quick stuff. There's one where you where it's a NES simulator where you have to blow into the cartridge and jostle the cartridge in the NES to get it to run.
That's cute.
Yeah. There is a dodgeball game. There's a rhythm game. One that I liked a lot was Yarn Ball, which is a maze game type game where you play as a ball of yarn, and every move you make, you'll get smaller and smaller. And you have to arrive to the goal in your last possible move. You get 5 moves you can make before you run out of yarn, and you have to get to the end by the time you're out of yarn.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah,
and
man. so it's there's paths where you have to and if you there's icons you can land on that re-roll roll yourself back up. So it's all about mapping out your path to make sure you arrive at the right place.
Okay.
It was really cool. It reminded me a lot of, have you ever seen that GIF or that video of here's how you get a knight to touch every single tile on a chessboard without overlapping at all?
Yes.
It was a lot like that. It felt like that.
Okay, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Man, I wish I hadn't forgotten. I'm sorry.
There was one that I didn't get to play because it's a game called Blarble 1290.
Okay.
And it is an interactive fiction story that requires use of the Game Boy printer.
Oh man,
and
that's cool though.
There's instructions how to get it set up with an emulator and how to emulate that, but I didn't have a chance to really go in depth and get that. If you're listening to this and you somehow actually own a Game Boy printer, I really think you should check this out because it sounds awesome.
Man, that sounds cool. I was literally Jeremy Parrish. I literally had the Game Boy printer on in my brain the other day because Jeremy Parrish, who does NES Works on YouTube, he reviewed or talked about, did a retrospective on the Game Boy like camera and printer, and it was like, oh, these things are really cute and quaint, and people are still like, it's not just 8-bitty games who's doing it. A lot of people actually have done homebrew games for the Game Boy, like for the Game Boy camera and printer in 2020, and I just think that is so neat to see people still making like NES and Game Boy games.
I think I love, that's like one of my favorite things. Like, you see these a lot, like Kickstarters and stuff, where it's like, we're making a retro game, and at this backer tier, we'll print cartridges that work in the old consoles.
Oh man, that would be cool. I would like to have like new Game Boy games.
New old games.
I was like wondering, I was trying to think of how to phrase that. Old new games?
Yeah, like,
who knows?
I think I think that's like just a super cool thing. Like, it's like one of those things where like you never think about actually doing it, and then someone sees it like, this is the most obvious idea you like ever.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you? If you're gonna emulate like the whole feel of it, why not make it real?
Yeah, no, there's actually, like, pretty recently released new NES games. Again, because I heard about it through Jeremy Parrish. But, like, there's, like, a rhythm game and a few other, like, games that have come out recently in Japan that came out on Famicom cartridges. And I just think that's so cool. It's like, oh, that's right. You can still technically make an NES game. You just have to pay to have the cartridge made, which is a huge pain in the ass, I assume. But it's still really interesting to think that, yeah, there's really nothing stopping you from making like a PS2 game, you know?
Right? Yeah. It's a lot like when you're like, oh, Quentin Tarantino made this movie on film.
Yeah, oh my god, that's absolute... Man, that would be cool. I would like to see more of a cottage industry pop up around old systems. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, that's harder now. It's not quite as ubiquitous as like a movie theater, but I still think it's neat. I would still, basically, I want somebody to make a modern Vita game in 2020.
Yeah, there you go.
Nobody's making Vita games. That's actually not true. I think people are still making Vita games. But yeah, I wish I had gotten around to getting the emulator, but I didn't.
Did you see that Persona 4 The Golden's on sale for the 3 people that own Vitas and haven't bought it?
I'm gonna, like, actually walk off a cliff. We can't have this conversation about how nobody new can play Persona 4 The Golden because it requires owning some version of a Vita. Whether that's, like, a used Vita or a new Vita or a Vita TV, which is also extremely hard to come by these days. Like... No, we can't have this conversation. Okay. We'll be here for an hour. Otherwise, I'll get mad for a whole hour about how I can't tell my friends casually, "Hey, you can play Persona 4 The Golden." So yeah, we got to move on.
So the next game on this list is 30 to 50 Feral Hogs.
Yeah, that one's cute.
It was the gameplay itself is very simple. It's the enemies come in and you shoot them with your gun.
Yeah, of course.
But it is based on... This game is very...
The greatest meme tweet ever.
This is very indicative of how quickly memes live and die nowadays.
I know, right?
Like that was what, like 6 months ago?
Oh, I don't even think it was 6 months ago.
It was not a long time ago that someo's like, I need an assault rifle to deal with the 30 to 50 feral hogs that attack my children.
My children. Yeah, I think it's this game is a funny like indicator of just the absurd pace at which like meme culture moves at these days. Something that was funny last week is a dead meme now.
Yeah,
and I think that's interesting because it does utterly resist the idea of being monetized. Not like this game is monetized, so it's fine. This is not me shitting. This is not me shitting at the game. The game is totally fine and fun. It's a fun little excursion of your time.
Yeah.
And, absolutely a little goofy time killer, especially since people have so much time on their hands now because of horror reasons. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's interesting, the fact that meme culture moves so fast these days, because it means that you can't monetize in jokes the way you used to. And I think that it almost feels like that is intentional. Not to go off on too much of a tangent from talking about video games, but yeah, let's go off on a tangent from talking about video games for a second here. It almost feels like the idea that culture moves so fast these days is because it's our only means of resisting having our culture sold back to us. If a joke is old in a week, then nobody can make money off of your goofy internet humor. You know?
They can't have their mascot do it.
Absolutely. It actively resists being capitalized upon. That's why Tumblr is the most useless of all social networks. And that's not me joking. That's an actual fact. Like, somebody published a study that was like, Tumblr is the most useless social network.
Having over 1,000 followers on Tumblr is pointless.
It is utterly pointless.
There's no like social growth, there's no monetization, there's nothing you can do, there's no awareness you can spread with a number of Tumblr followers.
No, and I almost kind of, like on Twitter, you know, Twitter is, the joke these days is because Tumblr is functionally dead, even though I still have a Tumblr. You know, everybody is migrated to Twitter now, and everyone says, like, oh, Twitter users are so weird. But, like, no, Twitter users are nowhere near as weird as your average Tumblr user. Because Tumblr is the most utterly resistant to being monetized social network ever. Because jokes just... they're completely incomprehensible. Everybody who's still on Tumblr has brain worms. And that includes myself. And it's this idea that if you make culture completely incomprehensible, then no one can sell your culture back to you. Which has, of course, led to all of us being driven insane by culture. Mind you, I think we are more completely brain broken than ever. But that being said, it does mean that AT&T can't sell your memes back to you. So maybe it was worth it? I don't know. We are hurtling towards a truly horrific cyberpunk future where we're speaking in genuine hieroglyphics, except it's John Mulaney reaction images.
Except it's a picture of an anime character gesturing to a butterfly.
Yeah, and everybody gets it. So I don't know, it's fine.
It is great to think about, like, the things that make you laugh on Tumblr and realize, like, boy, if I hadn't been on this site for 10 years, this would be incomprehensible.
This is why that social network is utterly useless, mind you, is because, like, if I can't imagine making a new Tumblr in 2020, you know?
No, it's...
like, could you imagine making a new account in the year of our Lord 2020 and just being like bombarded by all of these weird memes?
You see a picture and you ask, like, what does that mean? And someone has to go, okay, so back in 2006.
You know, you can inspire existential horror in people just by posting zodiac symbols on... And see, Ben got that joke instantly. I didn't have to explain it one fucking bit. If I say zodiac symbols, Ben goes, oh no.
Zodiac symbols plus rainbow.
Zodiac symbols plus rainbow plus green paint skin plus the bucket. Which you also know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see? This is what I mean. Which is a massive tangent off of talking about a little meme game, but that's fine. Yeah. These games are extremely short, so I'm using them to wring all sorts of strange discussion out of them.
Ultimately, the sensation I got playing 30 to 50 Feral Hogs is, boy, I remember that joke, and then I was like, that wasn't that long ago.
Time means nothing. I literally last week feels like 800 years ago. Mind you, this has been the worst week possibly ever.
Oh, yeah.
But last week feels like a lifetime ago at this point, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, boy, it's been a crazy decade these last 7 days, huh? So I literally have no reference of time of how long ago the 30 to 50 feral hogs meme was. I assume, like, you say 6 months, but I almost guarantee you it was not 6 months ago. It was probably like 2 months ago.
Right.
And we've all just, like I said, been driven completely insane. So it's fine. You know.
They killed Mr. Peanut and replaced him with a baby.
God.
Anyway.
And then no, we're not done. You stupid motherfucker. That baby, Peanut, has not posted a single fucking thing on Twitter basically since the Super Bowl ad, which means that somebody at Mr. Peanut, or whatever it's called, was like, oh, we fucked up. This is stupid. So what they're gonna do, this is a dumb ad idea. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna just like let it quietly die, and then in a few months be like, never mind, Mr. Peanut's fine.
And then the thing is, though, even though that meme died, we didn't forget.
We didn't forget. It's just that the horrors keep happening, and so it's not like part of my frame of reference anymore. I'm just like, boy, yeah, they really tried to. They very quickly and very clumsily tried to capitalize on the Baby Yoda sensation. And now look, the Baby Yoda thing is just not even a thing anymore.
No,
like,
of
we
course
don't
not.
even... No, of course not, because we live in a society. There we go. I was gonna make an actual joke there. I was gonna say a thing and try to be poignant, and then I actually said the words, we live in a society, so we gotta move on.
So speaking of memes... The next game was Absolute Unit.
Oh boy, another ancient. This one was cute though. It was basically like an Undertale, like a 15-second Undertale simulator.
Yeah, it was taking that idea of getting into quote unquote battles where the goal is not to hurt anyone,
right?
But to like do dog tricks to get fed,
so that you become a big fat dog.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's fine.
That was good. It was good.
It was cute. It was cute. It was a good Undertale simulator.
You could make that into a thing.
You could just make a big old fat dog.
Mm-hmm.
I am not, mind you, as utterly broken as, say, the Chapos when it comes to like heckin' pupper talk. Like, it doesn't bother me. I'm like, that's cute. It doesn't bug me. I mean, it's basically a dead meme at this point. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people get really mad if you do, like, heckin' pupper talk. But I'm just like, maybe it's because I've embraced my inner boomer, which everybody has at this point. Like, we're all drinking Diet Monsters and riding the lawnmower straight to hell. So I've just embraced my inner boomer. And I'm like, haha, cute dog, talk funny. It's fine. It's fine. Cute dog, talk funny. Look, it's a fat dog. Yay!
It's a big chonker.
It's a big chonkin' pup. I'm sure we just gave somebody out there an aneurysm. Good! Stop being so irony poisoned and enjoy the idea that dogs talk stupid, because I got news for you, pal. I have 4 of them in my house right now, and they probably do. Alright.
So, breaking off from all of these just bottom-of-the-barrel meme-tastic games, the next one was an Easy Lay.
I like this one.
I like this one a lot, too. This was fun.
It's first date simulator from hell, and I absolutely love it. This one is a delight. It's so... I got to the one with talking to the philosophy guy, and where he's just talking about philosophy, and it's like, can I lay my eggs in you? And he's like, I need you to make me a steak, and it's just like, what? Excuse me? And will you wear high heels? And when they was like, can you wear high heels? I was like, you know what? Never mind. I don't want to lay my eggs in you. I just want to leave and die. I can't do this.
I did 2 runs of it.
Okay.
I did one where I set up the absolute worst possible date you could ever go on. It was the philosopher who wanted a steak and to wear heels.
Oh, horrible.
And then I did one where I gave the guy a chance, and it turned into like this very beautiful like moment of like soulmate connecting.
And then you still had to lay your eggs in him.
You still laid your eggs inside of him.
Sure, and then they burst out of him, and he dies, and it's fine, you know? It's good.
because you are a wasp. The game is that you are a wasp going on her first date.
And you need to lay your eggs inside of someone. See? That's good. I love these little micro games like this. I don't know. Those kind of like fun, simple text-based browser games are some of my favorite just because they're so simple and addicting.
There is one I want to get back to because I didn't give it my full attention, but it was.
I think I know.
It was my uncle, the uncle who works for Nintendo.
No, okay, that's not the one I'm thinking of. Man, the one I'm thinking of is, I think it's called A Cold Room.
I think I've heard of that one.
Is that what it's called? Hold on. A Cold Room text game. Is it a dark room? Damn, that might not be it. That's not it. But, man, I'll have to find it and link it later. But it's basically like, it's one of those resource gathering games where you start, it's literally just, you are in a dark room and you strike a match and you light the fire. And that starts this whole, like, civilization building sim where you can go explore in dungeons and stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was a big thing on 4chan a billion years ago, just to keep revealing myself to everybody tonight. It was a thing on like 4chan and a few other boards for a few years. And it's a very simple, but it's like the same idea of like bigger resource gathering games where it's like you start with very little and then you have a village and then you can go out and explore and get more stuff and grow your village and blah, blah, blah. And I love it.
That does sound cool.
It is very cool. I wish I could remember the name of it right now. Somebody is listening to this going, Sarah, you're so stupid. It's this.
Well, I hope they add us then, because I kind of want to check that out. I need like a good, I want like a good text-based game like this.
Yeah, I'll Google it better, because I don't want to do it while we're on the air, because otherwise, like it's really boring to listen to somebody try to find something on Google. But anyways, if I find it, I'll put it on Twitter and link it to you and everybody else who finds it.
Awesome.
It's fun. I love stuff like that. And so I love An Easy Lay, which is just an excellent name, by the way. So...
So next was Baking with Lizzie, which was
another text game.
Yeah,
it's cute too.
Yeah, this one was a lot more straightforward. Just like it was just you're in a room, here are your resources.
Homestuck.
Yeah, put everything together kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was still like really cute and like coming off of it from An Easy Lay, like the tonal difference was really interesting.
Yeah. This kind of goes to this idea. They made fun of Jay Bauman for this on Red Letter Media during an episode of Best of the Worst, where Jay was like defending a bad DVD, or it might have been a bad VHS movie, by saying like, yeah, this came out in like a very specific time and place, and of course everybody riffed on him for it. But like, it is true. These games are coming out in a very specific time and place where like the idea of being able to make a game has been totally democratized to where, like, even if you don't even have artistic ability to draw, you can still make a game in some capacity just by, like, writing text-based adventures like this, which I think is probably the coolest thing that's come out of, like, this modern era. This concept. I mean, just this concept that literally anybody, if you have an idea, you can find a way to make a video game.
Removing the or like limiting the technical requirements needed to like make a video game, and the broadening of what a video game can be.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think we always circle back to how video games are such a unique medium compared to like every other storytelling medium that exists.
Absolutely.
And like, this is totally it.
Yeah, because you can do so many different things with the concept of video game.
When you think of like genres in movies or books, like it's kind of like a plot line category, like a drama, an action, a comedy, Sure. But with video games, you can have a text-based game or an action game or, like a skill-based puzzle game or like a reaction time-based game, Devil May Cry and Baking with Lizzie are both video games.
It's true. And I love that. I think it's just the coolest idea of just being able to, and even more so this idea that anybody can make a video game with this. Anybody can write a book, and basically anybody can make a movie these days. It's this cool idea of, even though we do live in the horrors right now, make no mistake about it, our ability to express ourselves and to create art has never been more democratized. You can write a book and put it on fucking, Amazon, and you can make money off of it that way. That's how, as much as I hate E.L. James, that's how 50 Shades got its start. It was originally a fan fiction, and then it became a book that was just for digital distribution, and then eventually got picked up by an actual publishing house and given a for real publishing deal. Or you have this idea that commercials and movies and stuff can all be shot on iPhones these days.
Right.
So anybody with a decent phone can make a movie. If you just have a few extra little pieces, like a Steadicam or something like that to keep it good for panning shots and stuff like that. Anybody can make a movie. Anybody can write a novel. And at this point, anybody can make a video game if you are willing to just learn a couple extra steps, which I just think is great. Even though, yes, we do live in the horrors, there are still little blips of light out there to remind you, hey, if you want to get an idea out there, there are still avenues of expression for you, basically in every direction, which I just think is fantastic.
And it's it even circles back to like you said, all these new different forms of media that exist nowadays. Is that, hey, guess what? You and me got together one day and we're like, let's form a radio show.
Yeah, and absolutely. Podcasts.
We did it. We just did it.
And then people actually listen to my drunken ramblings about indie games, where I don't actually talk about the indie game much, but I talk about 4chan and the democratization of media creation. And people listen to me and they think that's interesting. So God bless all 100 people who listen to us pretty consistently every month. I love every single one of you.
Yeah, we didn't need to get a studio and broadcast time on the local radio station.
No!
We bought some mics on Amazon and we plugged them into our computers and we downloaded Audacity.
We spent $40 on some snowballs and now we can actually record audio that sounds halfway decent and make a podcast that at least a handful of people listen to on a consistent basis, which, damn it, that's all I could ever ask for, So, that makes me happy.
And now, the devs of this game got together and they found a text program and they made a game out of it, and that's just awesome.
Made a video game. You can make a video game. You can sit out and you can make a video game about baking food for your friends.
Yeah.
And I love stuff like that. I just think it's the best. So.
So the next one I'm going to skip over for now because it's alphabetical and I want to get to that one last.
Is it Soraka?
Yes. So okay. We'll move on from that one.
Okay.
The next one is Loose Nozzles.
Oh, that one is fine. It's the equivalent of just a cutesy little phone game. Although I do think it is extremely funny that we went from literally, I think what was our last indie week? Was it Watam?
Yeah, it was Watam.
It's funny because Watam also has the same concept of being voiced and posited for children. And Loose Nozzles is basically just small children, know?
It is. It's the whole aesthetic is little kids. All your spaceship is crayon drawn. All of the voices are very clearly children. They got to scream into a microphone for a little bit. It's fun.
It's fun. It's cute. It's a physics-based game.
Yeah, I think the gravity and the physics need a little bit of tweaking because it is kind of very easy to lose control of that ship.
It's not very forgiving.
No,
it's very easy to wreck that ship.
For a game with basically Yoshi's story aesthetic, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, but it is cute. It's fine. It's just a little cutesy physics-based game. It's fine.
Yeah, it's definitely that whole design, that whole design approach is, again, it's I've never seen something like that before, and it was just cool. It was very like a very nice homemade aesthetic to it.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is one of my favorite ones that we did.
Okay.
This pack was the Ultimate Celebration.
I love this one.
This game,
I couldn't finish it because it's hard.
I didn't either. Yeah, it is very hard.
But it's a cute concept.
I love a game that just sets out like this is for speed running.
Yes, absolutely.
This is you got to get good and memorize the map and know the timing for everything, and get through it as fast as you can. And it is very interesting going through it the first few times and like realizing that as time passes, the dialogue and characters changes.
Yeah.
The music gets that low and like dreadful tone. Music's amazing, by the way. Like it's really
music
good.
Is super good in it. Yeah, like it is one of the really solidly made for such a simple concept, like a game that has no like you can't die in this game. And so the idea is just you can't die, so you just need to round up your friends for a celebration as fast as possible. So that's a really simple idea, but the idea is, of course, to do it as fast as possible, to learn where everybody is, and to navigate a maze that is full of, like, different little hazards and stuff like that, and to just try again. And I really, really liked it. It's very simple, but it has a certain kind of simple charm to it. I'd like to see... I hope somebody out there is trying to speedrun it, because I think it'd be really fun to see somebody try to do it very quickly.
I think so, too. I think it definitely would be fun. Like, it would be... would be a really good, like... I don't want to say AGDQ, but, like, it would be cool to see this game, like run, like, competitively.
You could see it run... You know, like how GDQs have those, like, late-night blocks... that are really like for like small games and stuff. Not the awful games block, because it's not bad. It's actually a good video game. It's not like not for the awful games block, but you know how GDQ sometimes has those blocks late at night that are for like lesser known games, like how they once did Amy, which is a terrible horror game that So I don't know if you know this, but Dan Olsen, the guy who, I mean, you know who Dan Olsen is. He does like movie reviews on stuff on YouTube, right?
Right.
He talked about 50 Shades of Grey, and he's talked about The Book of Henry and Suicide Squad and all of those. Like, you know who Dan Olsen is if you saw him. He was at a GDQ event either last year or 2 years ago, and he speed ran a game called Amy, which is a god-awful horror game where it's basically the whole game is a escort mission, right? But it wasn't part of the awful games block. It was just like a little one of those esoteric blocks they do.
Right.
I could see this game as part of an esoteric block. Which would be fun. Like something that like a runner who runs a big game also shows up at GDQ to run this game, you know? So, because it is a cute little charming idea of lots of platforming puzzles and navigational issues to solve, which I really like.
Yeah, it was really cool and like it very kind of poignant at the end.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a game that I probably might go back to just because I do kind of want to see the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, again, the music is really, really good.
Yeah.
So, that and maybe the Mansa Sirocco, which we'll talk about in a minute, is worth the cost of admission. And then the rest of this stuff is also just like an extra cool bonus. So, next.
The next one is Theseus in the Dark.
This is a game I had to turn off after about 30 seconds.
I did not get very far in this.
Because it is a game that has no graphics whatsoever, which is fine. Other games have done that before. But the concept is you're trying to navigate a maze using the sounds of a rock bouncing off of a wall. But the sound effect they use for bouncing that rock off the wall is just like a plink, 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 the same tone all the time. I had to turn it off. I was literally just like, oh, this is making me feel crazy. I can't do this.
It is a little maddening.
Which is maybe the point, but also I couldn't. I'm sorry.
It's one of those things where it's like, I've done games where, like, I've played games or done puzzles like this where it's like you are deprived of, your senses and you kind of have to navigate and kind of memorize the layout. This game doesn't offer a single reference point to navigate through. Like, there's no... in any other game, even like the Mansa Soraka, which has pitch black environments, there are still landmarks and things you can observe to at least get a feeling for your bearings. Yeah. There's nothing like that in this one.
Yeah.
If it was like the rock made different sounds depending on what wall it was bouncing off of, you could kind of get a better feel for, like, you know, where you are. But no, it is just the same sound over and over again.
Yeah, and that makes you feel like you're like, it does actually make you feel crazy after a while. So yeah, I had to turn that one off. Sorry.
Yeah.
So next,
the next one, second to last, is The Beauty of Poppies.
Oh, that's the sad one.
Which is, I did not get very far in this one because it made me very uncomfortable.
I'm sorry. I feel really bad for having to, but I mean, like, I couldn't. I mean, we're living in the horrors.
Yeah, this is definitely the game that hits a little too close to home.
And I know it's about Afghanistan and it's like, okay, obviously the two of us are people living in the United States in 2020, where our lives are significantly better than anything our horrible imperialistic government has ever forced upon a country like Afghanistan. And any other time, I don't mind sad video games. I like sad video games about war, and I like... I don't mind learning about other people's situations and stuff like that. I've played plenty of games and read plenty of books and watched plenty of new movies about subject matter like that. But just this one time, with all this stuff going on, I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm too busy trying to cope with everything else that's going on right now.
If this was something we set out to do, like, you know, this would be like if we were sitting down to do our Doom episode and we played Doom 2016, right?
Sure.
And one of the levels in Doom was a flashback to, like, the Doomslayer's, like, first drop down into an enemy country, and it was played entirely straight, like, no action or glory kills.
Yeah.
And it was like, and then it was back to fun shooting demons. And it's well, that's certainly poignant and beautiful, but I was not prepared for it. So it's weird. And
and I mean, like, what I saw of it, I really liked. But any other time, I could have, like, been able to handle The Beauty of Poppies. But right now, I'm just like, boy, I'm trying to just not worry about, like, my parents, like, getting killed by this, like, coronavirus shit. Not to be too real for a second. So, like, I was like, I'm sorry. I'll come back to it someday, and we'll talk about it in a more meaningful capacity.
Yeah. But, it's just the contrast between this game and, like, feral hogs and absolute unit being in the same pack is like...
Yeah, you know. I get it. I mean, if it's like any other magazines are... I mean, this is a zine, of course. Yeah. And magazines have fluff pieces and cutesy things next to horrors as well. I get it, but, you know, just like in a magazine, sometimes I'm like, you know, I don't think I can handle this right now. So I'm sorry. Yeah. Maybe we'll come back to it someday because I would like to delve deeper into it. Yeah. But for now, I gotta pass over this one so we can talk about our last game.
Yes, the last one is the Mansa of Soraka, which is probably the most in-depth game. Because it's a game that's actually on sale on Steam.
Yes. So, this is the point where I clarify that this game is actually a game that you have to spend money on. It's an additional $5 to play the Mansa Soraka if you get Indiepocalypse. So that being said, you don't get it free. You actually have to pay an additional little bit to, at least as far as I can tell, to play the Mansa Soraka.
It's basically in here as advertisement instead of, like, you know, being the game.
So we gave it a shot.
Yeah.
So that being said, there's my full disclosure. This game is paid. So we paid $5 for it. So it's not like I'm not going to tear apart like a little indie game that I got in a zine, because these are fun little games that people make in their free time. You know, every other game that's made in this is a game that's made in their free time. Most of them are donationware. You can go to their individual page and pay like $1. And of course, if you bought Indiepocalypse, you are contributing money toward the people who contributed toward Indiepocalypse. The Manson Soraka is not like that. So that's my full disclosure when I say I kind of hate this game.
I also don't want to be mean, because not only because this is still an indie game, and it's still made by a small studio, and this is very clearly a project they put a lot of heart into. You know, it's easier to rip on something like a David Cage game.
Sure, absolutely.
That being said, I certainly am very critical of it.
So, I think this is a good time to talk about the idea of making a video game based like we were just talking about earlier in the podcast, this idea of making a video game based off of old technology.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a lot of that in the last 5 years. We've had Shovel Knight, we've had Faith, which has been an absolute... Yes. This is probably the closest analog is Faith, but give me a second. We've had Faith, we've had Shovel Knight, The Messenger, a bunch of other games have come out in recent years that emulate the feeling of playing an old video game, but with some modern conveniences, right?
Right.
Because as it actually turns out, sometimes playing old video games kind of sucks because they don't have those modern conveniences that exist entirely because, like, as it turns out, those are good things.
Yeah.
And we didn't even conceptualize them back in the 1980s or whatever, 1990s.
It's like I keep saying, like, a few times, which is I would love to get back to Chrono Cross, but they need to re-release it so I can have a fast forward button. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this idea of making a game that is a almost a one-to-one homage to an old
DOS games.
It's like a DOS-based game.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing in this case.
It's, you know, you mentioned Faith, and I think Faith is a really great analog to this, because despite Faith being very much like an even older looking DOS game than this, it still has a lot of modern conveniences in it. One of which is that you respawn really quickly in Faith. It is, what would you say, 15 to 20 seconds from death to actually getting control again?
In Manson Soraka?
Yeah.
It's, I would say 10 to 20 seconds, depending on, and if you do die, you wake up in the same, it's the cell, right?
Yeah, the cell, and then you have to get back to progress, you have to go through a few of the same rooms over and over again to get to where you were last.
Yeah. And that is in Faith, you die and you get the Mortis screen, and then you immediately load from your last checkpoint. And it's 3 seconds.
Yeah, checkpoints are very generous in Faith too.
Yes, they are. You get a checkpoint basically after every like major sequence of events. You checkpoint, and Manson Soraka has none of those modern conveniences, and maybe that's a thing some people are into, but I sure as hell am not.
It's the problem I have with this game is that, kind of like Faith, you are given, you know, it emulates the very old thing where, like, here's your game, you were given no direction.
Sure.
And you have to figure it out for yourself. Yeah. And the problem is that it is so hard to make progress in this game.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things that you are defenseless against.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I don't know how far you got into it. I feel like I got pretty far into it.
Right.
But like, it required a lot of frustration and a lot of me actually quitting out of the game to like clear my head and play something different, and then say, all right, I'll give it a few more runs. Right.
Yeah, it's it definitely feels like an actual exercise in frustration, which is just like, man, I want it, because like when I started, I really, like when I first booted it up and started it, I really liked it. I thought the whole getting the little unique screens for all the monsters that get you is cool. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of heart put into this. There's a lot
and there's a lot of like really good flavor text and stuff like that I really like. I mean, it's really small things. I like that this game has an inventory system that I wish Faith had.
Right.
Like simple stuff like that. And I like this idea of it's a thing, it's kind of a holdover from old video games, and it's a thing I really like. And it's kind of a thing that's gone the way of the dodo, is this idea of being able to inspect like nearly anything.
And you like at least gives you like a line of something.
Yeah, and those all kind of coalesce into like a fuller world. It's a silly thing to compare it to, but the first Devil May Cry game did that.
Yeah,
right?
where you can go and
you can actually inspect things.
Yeah,
because it was a holdover from when it was a Resident Evil.
Yeah.
And I really liked that in the first Devil May Cry, because it did give me a fuller sense of the world. And so I really liked it in Manson Soraka because of the same idea. It was a very just like, oh, this is... It gives you the sense that a lot of thought has been put into this game. But clearly, not a lot of thought has gone into player convenience.
And you know, and I can pinpoint the exact problem. It's that, like I said, you're defenseless against things, especially the Shoggoth on the ground floor of the house.
Yeah. Oh my god.
If it sees you, you can't outrun it. It's faster than you.
Yeah.
It never stops pursuing.
Yeah, there's no way to like shake it that I'm aware of,
unless you like exit the area, like you go up or down the stairs or fall down the hole in the garden.
Right.
There's no way to shake it, and there's no way to predict where it is. And so like, I mean, you have like the gurgling it makes, but that doesn't give you an indication of like which room it's close in, you know?
Right. Yeah. So you don't know to be able to avoid it in a good way. You just kind of have to guess, and it's these little guesswork things that make it really frustrating to play. Even though I think conceptually it has good ideas, it just feels like after a while it just feels like an exercise in frustration to just keep trying over and over again. And I mean, maybe that's kind of the point, you know? A lot of old games, if this is trying to be a faithful one-to-one creation of like old video games, then boy, they nailed that. Because old video games did kind of trade in this concept of frustration to lengthen the amount of playtime.
Yeah, and it's... I hate to say Dark Souls, but this game does have a Dark Souls element to it.
Sure.
Which is you die and then respawn in the area, and your death lingers in the environment, you know? But the thing with Dark Souls is that you'll know the patterns for everything.
Yeah.
Because those all reset. But like when you're in the caverns with the rock monster things, there's no way to predict which ones will wake up when you're close to them. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just... This game wants you to explore every nook and cranny. But then,
it's hard.
But then it doesn't let you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. To go back to the Dark Souls idea for a second, like Dark Souls gives you a pretty good degree of agency where like, yeah, it's hard, but eventually you can really figure it out. I feel like it's harder to figure out this game. It's a balancing issue for sure. That just gets in the way of being able to enjoy what I think is some pretty crunchy world building and some pretty fun concepts, and like it could be a really good adventure game with some tweaking, and maybe down the line some updates will come. I mean, this game came out last year is the only problem. I checked the release date on Steam. But I mean, who knows? Updates could happen still, and to make it more convenient, I would love some sort of quick save. I don't know, like I feel like quick save might break it too much, But some sort of better save option.
You don't need...
a bonfire.
You don't need to go back to the title screen every time you die.
Yes.
If they just cut out that and just, like, go back to the dungeon after the first DOS loading screen...
Yeah, absolutely.
That would have been, like, so much better.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know why they kick you back to the title screen every time.
I don't know either. It's so baffling. Because there's nothing there for you.
Yeah, there is no, like, option screens or anything like that. You just press S to continue, or SQ, or whatever the other button is, to continue. Like, there isn't any information to glean from the title screen, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
It just feels very obtuse for the sake of being obtuse.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
wanted to like the Manson Soraka because, like, when it first started, it's like, oh, this is cool. I really got its vibe. I really liked its vibe, but I played it a little bit longer, and I was like, oh.
I feel like if this game had come out like 25 years ago,
it would have been revolutionary.
Yeah, it would have been a cult classic, and people would be talking about how good the Manson Soraka is, to this day.
Yeah, it would have had a remake. Back in 2007, that would have sucked. Like that Alone in the Dark remake that everybody hates.
But because it came out now without the modern sensibilities that a game like this should have, it feels lacking. And
is there a pause button in this godforsaken game?
I don't think there is. I couldn't find one.
That's the other thing that Faith understands. Faith has a pause button that lets you, like, stop the action. And Faith Chapter 3 has a fucking notes section. So if you want to, you can stop the action, take a breath, read through your notes, collect your thoughts, and keep moving. But, like, as far as I hit every button on my keyboard, I could not find a pause function. It's like, I know this is a weird thing, but the ability to pause is such an important... It's honestly one of the things that bugs me about, like, Dark Souls games. Is that I can't... Especially because I am, like, severely ADHD. Not to, like, get too much into my head on my podcast about, like, goofy indie games. But I am extremely ADHD. I'm not on any kind of medication. I just kind of manage my symptoms, like, every day. The ability to pause my video games and, like, do other things and then come back to my video game is a really important, like, thing for me. And it's kind of one of the things that's kept me away from, like, your Dark Soul. Even though I really like Bloodborne, a video game I am extremely bad at, the ability, or the inability to pause those games, like, truly pause those games, is kind of a deal breaker for me. Because it's just, like, I can't take a break from it and let my brain do other things. Yeah. And it was another thing that really bugged me about the Manson Soraka, is that, like, I can't pause this game and go do other things. The game is still running in the background at all times. So it's like, it's such small things. Modern conveniences.
It reminds me a lot of one of the big nitpicks I have with, like, a lot of classic RPGs, like JRPGs, which is
that you can't stop the time clock.
Well, not that, but also the fact that, like, yeah, that is annoying into, like, Tales games, especially in Persona games, where it's like, I have, like, 300 hours logged into Persona 4, but how many of those are me actually playing the game?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, the thing that really bothers me about this whole thing is, like, this game doesn't make a distinction between exploration and being pursued.
Yeah.
And that's a lot like in the classic RPGs, where it's like, here's your puzzle room, but random encounters are still on. Yeah,
absolutely. I hate that shit.
It's so annoying. It's so easy to get turned around, to forget what you were doing.
It breaks the flow of gameplay in such, like, a disconcerting way, because one minute you're, like, really in, like, the puzzle headspace. This is a thing that I think video game developers still to this day don't understand, is that when you play a game, you have different headspaces.
Yeah.
You know? You can start up a game and you'll get into a section that has, like, you'll get into an area and your brain will go, okay, it's puzzle time. Or you'll go, like, okay, well, it's combat time. And it's really important to delineate those spaces in better way. And I'm not saying, like, Mass Effect, everybody makes fun of Mass Effect for its chest-high walls. I'm not saying do that. But I'm definitely saying you can subtly feed players information to let them know that, like, now is combat time, you know?
Yeah. It definitely is a good indicator that tells you without a flashing combat time sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a thing like, better get our guns out here. Like,
yeah,
you see the walls and you know, oh, I'm probably going to have to duck behind those.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of, you know, there are more subtle ways to do it than Mass Effect 2's chest-high walls, which is like a joke at this point. Like, you walk into an area and there's chest-high walls and you go like, oh, okay, this is a combat arena. But you can still delineate it in better ways. And I think it's really important to understand that delineation for players so that they can kind of subtly, and it's all extreme subtlety at work here to make players kind of grok this concept of like, oh, now is combat time.
Yeah, it's a thing where, like, you know, and I kind of, the more I think about this now, just like off the top of my head, this is probably why the puzzle aspect of Devil May Cry just like dropped off the face of the earth by the time 3 came out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is because they realized we don't want puzzles and exploration to get into the way of the combat part that people are enjoying.
Yeah.
And that's why the Mance on Soraka, like, it doesn't work, is because you can never explore the manor in a way that, like, you don't feel rushed. Because the Shoggoth is right there, or the bat creatures in the second floor are right there. And there's oftentimes nothing you can do about it.
You know what it makes me think of?
What?
A good analog is actually Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 7 does an incredibly good job of delineating when you need to be worrying about Jack and when you... Like, RE7 is really good about making it subtle. Like, you spend all of the game worrying that Jack is going to burst through a wall and make your life harder. But you also kind of subtly know, like, okay, now is at least... Until Jack bursts through that wall, I have some degree of quiet time to explore and poke around, you know?
When you kind of pick up that, like, his appearance is gonna be scripted.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not gonna happen until the environment changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So until I put the lock into the clock thing and open up and get the broken shotgun part, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Or you know, it's the old horror game aspect of, well, the enemies can't kill me yet because I don't have a gun.
Yeah,
and that won't be fair.
Right, and that's the thing, is that the Mance on Soraka really doesn't care about fairness, which, I mean, maybe that's part of part of it. Maybe that is literally, like, it is trying to be, like, a genuine one-to-one recreation of an old DOS game, which were notoriously unfair.
Yeah.
You know? Like, everybody knows that old video games were super fucking hard, and maybe that's part of its design. And if that's your thing, then, man, you go live your bliss and play the Mance on Soraka, because it's $5. But it's not my thing.
No, it's
not for me.
After 3 decades of games that have improved on this concept, it's hard to go back to really, really go back to the way things used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I wish I would have liked it more, but I couldn't. I realized I was not making the progress at a pace that I felt was enjoyable anymore.
Right. And the thing is that I don't feel too bad about talking so negatively about it, because it was an extra cost on top of the cost of Indiepocalypse. So it's fine. You know? It's like, I totally recommend you go out and buy the rest of Indiepocalypse. Like, and give this zine a chance to give you, like, a bunch of cool, small games to just kind of tool around with and enjoy. But because the Mance on Soraka was an extra expense on top of it, I don't feel so bad about saying, like, you don't need to spend your money on this one. You can just go buy Indiepocalypse and enjoy everything else, because those are very simple, small, little fun excursions.
Yeah, exactly.
So, You know, it's fine. There's still a lot of really good stuff in here, though. Yeah, I mean, like, as a whole, I really enjoyed this a lot.
I think this concept, I hope this concept is successful, and I hope, like, he keeps finding devs who want to be a part of this, because I think this could grow into something that's very big and, like, very reliable, you know?
Yeah, and I think, again, I love collective action. We on The Gorge support the idea of collective action and working together and supporting your fellow indie devs and
definitely
doing your part. Making sure everybody gets paid. I think it's extremely cool that the model of Indiepocalypse is making sure every contributor gets paid. I really like that. I think it's the best way to go forward with such a saturated indie market. So yeah, I highly recommend, even with a couple missteps inside this, you know, there's a few fumbles, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's still totally worth it.
Ultimately you are feeding people's passions, and it's never a bad thing.
And, you know, you might find your next favorite video game in this, or your next favorite tabletop game. Again, there's tabletop games. There's all sorts of little fun experimental projects in here for a pretty affordable little price. So I highly recommend trying out Indiepocalypse.
It's definitely, whenever we do these itch collections, I'm always thinking, like, I always come away with at least one of these games where I'm like, boy, I really, really hope they get to do, like, a full-on
a big
thing.
Project.
You know, I hope they get hired by someone and, like, that company lets them, you know, put their ideas to life like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And definitely, like, if this gets more eyes on these devs and gets them, like, people to look at their creativity, then that would be great.
Yeah. Or even just, you know, like I said, not to get too real, but let's get real for a second here. Everybody is going through the horror right now. And a lot of people have had their hours cut. A lot of people have had the amount of money they have coming in cut. So if you have the ability to spend some money and support a couple of indie devs making little fun projects so that everybody can have some extra gas money or some extra food money, I think this is definitely worth your time and worth your money, because it's not a lot, but it goes a long way, and so you'd be helping a lot of cool people out. So yeah, big recommend for Indiepocalypse. So. Yeah. Maybe eventually we'll come back and talk about the Afghanistan game and the tabletop game. I'd like to come back and talk about those eventually when I am in the correct headspace to do so. Yes. Or when I've had time to talk about the tabletop game. So I cannot emphasize how cool I think it is that they also include tabletop games in this collection. So
definitely really cool.
So yeah.
All right. So that'll do it for us.
Yay!
Thank you, Visitor, for use of background music. You can follow me on Twitter at thegorgepodcast. You can follow Sara at radioinactivity. Again, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thegorge. Again, $200 gets you That's Hell You're Walking Into, a Fate podcast once a month. And at $500, we're still going to be doing The Bad Game, which would be our monthly stream of absolute garbage games we find.
There's plenty of them out there.
So yeah, it would really help. It'd be really cool if you could help us out with that. And if you want to listen to Sara play tabletop games, you can listen to her other podcast.
Hey, I love tabletop games. I love talking about them. I love playing them. I'm in another tabletop podcast where me and a bunch of cool queer friends get together and we try out different systems. It's called Big Gay Nerds. We have a lot of fun. We're finally back to Blades in the Dark, which is probably my favorite system ever made. Yay. And this is one of my favorite games I've ever played. We're back. It rules. We'll be recording new episodes probably this weekend. Please look forward to it. The first episode of the new block is finally up. So come check us out at soundcloud.com/BigGayNerds. That's all one word. And you can find the links to the rest of our social media from there. Thanks.
All right, that'll do it for us.
Fuck those Shoggoth.
Fuck that Shoggoth. That thing ruined so many runs where I'm just like, oh, I'm dead.
I'm dead. There we go. It's all over now. Fuck that shit. I don't like Shoggoths. H.P. Lovecraft was a huge racist, even though he made a bunch of cool concepts. Fuck that shit. We're out. Good night, everyone.